I know that no matter how I say this, people who want to take it the wrong way are going to take it the wrong way. So I'm just going to say it without filter, and I hope that I'm not socially punished for being too blunt and honest. So, can you pull up our next caller, Lee?
Hello?
Hi there.
Firstly, thank you for taking my call.
Yeah.
And thank you for the good work you do. This is my first time calling in to a show. And some of your short videos you've put on have given me great comfort. And I just wanted to call in just to discuss the situation that I'm dealing with at the moment that's very heavy with me. Do you want me to go through it?
Yeah.
Quickly?
Quickly. Yeah. Tell us the gist of the situation.
The gist of it is I've got a family member who lives with me who's in deep depression and who's drinking very heavily and who's rejecting all support and who's in a very dark place. And I'm trying to figure out a way of reaching them. Some of your clips about addiction and alcohol being the solution and the problem being something deeper about the self and the ego really resonated with me. But he's in a very dark place, and I'm trying to bring the family in. And I was just going to seek some guidance on how to approach, somebody that's like a rock, somebody that's shut themselves in a way just to kind of, it's a very difficult place to be.
Absolutely. Okay, let me speak to that. And if you're still with us, you could stay on the line, and I might bring up your volume in a minute. But let me just speak to this. So, first of all, thank you for your vulnerability. I'm just amazed always by the bravery and the vulnerability of the callers on this show. We have such high quality callers. You can hear the people who are calling in. These are intelligent, thoughtful people. It takes a lot to share like this in this type of environment. So, let's speak about this. First of all, standard disclaimers apply. I'm not an addiction counselor. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a clinician of any type. I do not have any type of credentials or degree. I'm a rabbi, okay? I'm just a rabbi. Happen to be a rabbi who has hung around addiction, and I know a little bit about it, but really, 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 I'm not an expert. 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 Do not rely on anything I say. Okay. I'm putting it out there just as food for thought, but really don't rely on me. This is just food for thought. One of the most frustrating situations in the world is loving someone who is in the throes of addiction, because it is so hard, if not impossible, to reach them. It's almost like until the addiction is ready to loosen its grip, this person is just not going to be able to hear you. And we try everything. We try bargaining, and we try threats, and we try more love, and we try more toughness, and we try calling in the experts, and we call in the law, and we try throwing money at it, and we try everything. And I'm not saying that nothing works, but what I will say is I'm not sure anything works until this magic window opens up, and I don't think we have a button that we can push that makes that magic window open up. I think there's a moment, and it's not once in a lifetime. I think there are many times that it happens where the addict hits bottom and they are reasonable for a moment, sometimes for a very fleeting moment. But when that window's not open, it's almost like there's nothing you can say or do. So here's what I often tell people who call me with a similar call as yours. And I've probably had this experience hundreds of times where someone will call up. It's interesting, by the way. You say that your loved one, I'm not sure if you mentioned the relationship, it doesn't matter, is drinking. So I don't know. This is purely anecdotal. This is just my personal experience. But in the hundreds of phone calls that I've had about, specifically about alcohol, about drinking, I would say 95% were from friends and family. Like, it's almost like maybe a few times somebody called me up and said, I'm drinking too much, I'm worried about it. Yeah, interesting. I've had a lot of people call me up and say they were sex addicts. That I get a lot. That it's almost like 50-50 the addict or the addict spouse regarding sex addiction. But with alcohol is like 95%, if not more, friends and family calling me with the problem. And maybe 5% of the time, if not less, the person self-identifying as the alcoholic. So what does that tell me? Again, this is purely anecdotal, but it tells me that there's a lot of self-deception, and it reinforces what I was saying before, that window of honesty and willingness and openness is usually closed. It's usually closed. So then what do I tell people who call me with this type of call? Well, one thing I could do, I want to be careful how I say this. I want to be careful how I say it, and yet I know that no matter how I say this, people who want to take it the wrong way are going to take it the wrong way. So I'm just going to say it without filter, and I hope that I'm not socially punished for being too blunt and honest. If I wanted to, if I had no conscience and no scruples, and I wanted to cash in on people's desperation, what I would do is tell people, give me $10,000, $20,000. I could name a price. It wouldn't matter. People mortgage their houses for this stuff. I could say, give me $50,000 and I'll come down and I'll talk to your loved one. Now, why don't I do that? Because, like I just said, I don't believe that, at least I don't think I can say anything to someone who's not ready. I don't think I can say anything to someone who's not ready. So, but people are so desperate, they're going to pay anything on that hope, on that lottery ticket that maybe the alcoholic will hear them. So let me tell you what you can do without spending $10,000. You can do this for free. Any self-respecting old-timer in AA will pay a 12th step call, and they'll come down and they will not try to get the alcoholic to stop drinking. They will just talk about their own drinking, and they'll leave. And if the alcoholic wants to pursue that as a solution, they will. And if they still need to continue suffering before they're ready to pursue the solution, then that's what's going to happen. But probably the most effective, if you want to pursue this course of action, the most effective conversation that you could facilitate would be to get an old timer in AA to come down. And I'm telling you right now, they're not going to force this person to go into treatment. They're not going to schlep them even to an AA meeting. They're just going to come down and talk about their own story and allow your loved one to identify or not identify, to relate or not relate with what they just heard. All right. But then let's say they don't relate to it. Let's say they just decide, well, that's not me. You don't understand. My story is different, which is the typical answer. You don't understand. My story is different. So now what are you going to do? When I've had this conversation, and as I said, I've had this conversation hundreds of times, what I will often say to friends and family of an alcoholic is, answer, please, the following question. I'm assuming that your life is on hold right now because you are dealing with absolute insanity. So the following question, please answer honestly. If there were a way for you to regain your sanity, regardless of whether or not your loved one gets well, would you be interested in hearing how that might be done? That's the question that I ask. Would you be interested in regaining your sanity regardless of whether or not your loved one gets well? Now, I'm going to ask people out in YouTube land. Let's say I've had this conversation 300 times. I'm just making up a number, but it's probably around that number. What percentage of the time do people say, yes, I'm interested in that. Tell me how to regain my sanity. Okay, you want to guess? All right, so I'll tell you, less than 10%. Less than 10%. And I'm pointing this out because codependency is an addiction as well. In fact, in some ways, codependency is a more insidious addiction than addiction itself. Because the person whose addiction is to drugs and or alcohol, it's pretty obvious what they're doing is killing themselves. The person who's addicted to saving the addict, which we call codependency, it's so insidious because it looks like you're doing something noble and you can't stop. You feel you have a moral obligation to continue with the insanity. So less than 10%, I would guess, anecdotally, tell me they're even interested in this concept of regaining their own sanity. Most will tell me, no, I'm not interested in that. I'm not interested. No. And if I'll push the issue and be like, well, why wouldn't you want to regain your sanity? I mean, the person may or may not get well. If I push the issue, and times when I've pushed the issue, the answer is usually something to the effect of, like, I don't have a right to be sane while my loved one is suffering, or it wouldn't feel right, it wouldn't feel appropriate to be sane, to have serenity, to have my life back while my loved one is still suffering. So it's kind of amazing what a grip the addiction has, not just on the identified patient, but on the entire family. And just like I said, the addict isn't ready to stop until they're ready to stop. The codependent is not ready to stop until they're ready to stop. And what does it mean the codependent is ready to stop? Well, just like the addict is ready to stop. When you're sick and tired of being sick and tired, then you stop. So when the codependent says, I can't do this anymore, I've reached the end of my rope, I can't do this anymore, I still love this person, I'm still going to do what I can to be compassionate toward this person, but I need to get my life back. That's called being sick and tired of being sick and tired. Then recovery can happen for the codependent. And that's what I want to suggest to you. I want to suggest to you, this is counterintuitive, and I know that you may not be able to accept this. This is not what you want to hear, but what I want to suggest to you is the following. The higher priority right now is not your loved one's sobriety, but your sobriety. Your sobriety. You're going to say to me, my sobriety, I'm not the one drinking. No, but you're emotionally drunk. If you are in this orbit of the insanity of addiction, then you are also drunk. You are drunk on the illusion of godlike power that we think that we can exercise over our loved one. And there are programs such as Al-Anon, which is for the friends and family of the alcoholic, just like Alcoholics Anonymous is for the alcoholic. So then there's Al-Anon for their friends and family. And they follow the exact same 12 steps. And they pursue the exact same spiritual solution. And what I have found is that when the friends and the family of the alcoholic pursue their own recovery in a parallel program such as Al-Anon, and they become sane, and they get their life back, then it may not make the alcoholic get sober, but nothing can make the alcoholic get sober. What it does do is it removes a lot of the insanity that you didn't realize was feedback insanity. You know, there's that core of insanity, and then there's the feedback of insanity bouncing off of itself, the ricochet effect, so to speak. And when the people in the orbit of the alcoholic become sober, emotionally sober, through a program such as Al-Anon, then at least a lot of that ricochet effect is going to be minimized, and there's not the extra debris field, so to speak, of the echoes of insane behavior. You sort of just contain the insanity to one place, and you're not playing off it anymore. You're not exacerbating it. You're not amplifying it through your own unhealthy reactions. So my suggestion to you would be that you and everyone in the family should go to a program like Al-Anon and have a spiritual awakening, and it may or may not help your loved one get sober. It definitely will not make it harder for them to get sober. If anything, it will increase the likelihood of their getting sober. But at the very least, it will make the home less of a crazy place. Right now, the home is being held hostage. The whole home is under a dark cloud. So if you pursue your recovery in a program such as Al-Anon, then the home becomes a healthier place, and it increases the likelihood or the availability of something positive happening for your loved one, although it's certainly not a guaranteed outcome because, again, we do not control people. Okay, I don't know if you're still with me. I'm just going to turn up the volume and see if you're still with me over here. But, Lee, you still with me?
Yes.
Okay, does anything
I'm
saying, thank you for hanging in there with me. Does anything I'm saying resonate with you as possibly being true or applicable?
A lot of it is true, particularly the feedback bit. And I've not thought about the codependency element of it like that. I hope my call isn't too bad. Hopefully the quality's better.
No, it's fine. It's static. That's why I muted it before. It's fine. But I just want to check in with you that you understood my message, and what I'm suggesting to you is the wisest course of action in my estimation right now at this point. You get what I'm saying?
No, absolutely. I get what you're saying, and both points I've made a note of that, which is, get the old timer from AA to come in, which is useful, and get a program for the family, for myself and my wider family, to have our own. Yeah.
Yes, you got it. You heard me loud and clear. Okay, so God willing, there should be healing in your family, and your loved one should find healing. But at the end of the day, we're not in control. We can only do what we can do, and God is in control. Okay, that was I really thank you for that call. That was
perfect. Thank you.
Really
Thank
important
you
stuff.
Thank you.
Thank you. That was really important stuff. Okay, I have other calls coming in. One second. Yeah, hi. Are you calling in right now? Okay, try again on that number that I gave you. Oh, actually, wait. Can you call me back in like 50? No. 1 second. No, on that other number, that 516 number. Wait, could you call me in 15 minutes? Is that okay? Ooh, okay. 1 second. Michael, welcome. Michael's on the show.
Rabbi, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank God. How are you doing?
I'm doing very well. Glad to hear it.
Hi, Melissa, welcome.
Hello.
Hi there.
Hi, thanks for having me on tonight.
It's our pleasure. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rabbi. Great to be here.
Hey there. How are you doing?
Doing well. Long-time listener, first-time caller. Thanks for taking me.
Hello.
Hey there. You're on the air. We'd like to extend a special thank you to Mendel Simon and 9x9 Tech for powering this call-in show and making it possible for us to connect with our amazing audience. 9x9 Tech offers a one-stop service for all your communication needs, along with personalized tech solutions catered specifically towards your business. Visit 9x9tech.com today. That's 9x9tech.com. Thank you, Mendel and the team, for your incredible support. Hey, this is Shais Taub. You were just watching a clip from this class. If you want to get the full context, the full class that this clip that you just watched was from, you watch right here. Click right here. Here.